Hi, Cameron.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Good.
Good, good, good.
My Zoom screens are split in two. Any idea why that is?
What is?
My Zoom screens?
No, I have no idea. In the upper right-hand corner of one of them, do you have a view option? Might be the view, I'm not sure. All right. Okay. So to begin, let me ask, anybody have any questions from last week? Anything that you're having trouble with? Anything you needed to cover? Analia sent me an email, so I'm going to cover that email. And then I got a couple other emails as well that I wanted to talk about. But before we get into those, I was seeing if anybody else had anything. So one thing, Tyler sent me an email this week with a file that had a large file size. You know, it should have probably only been less than a megabyte for the file size, but it was like 20 megabytes. So it was a little larger than it should have been. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that file. Did you get my email last night, Tyler, on that one?
Yeah, I got it. I was looking at it. Yeah.
Okay, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what's going on there with that particular file. So if I go to open up your email here. Okay. So this file right here is about 20 megabytes. And when I had looked at what was causing the size, you can see here that there's some Chinese and there's all, so there's Chinese, and then there's also this font down here. And if we click on the font, you'll notice up here in the, oh, you know what? I didn't ever start sharing my screen. Hold on just a second. I should do that first. Just a minute. Share my screen and share. Okay, can you see my screen now? So in this particular font or file, when I open it up, there's some Chinese characters here. That's actually been converted to curves, but this one hasn't. If I click around on the text, you'll see the text here. But if I click on this one, okay, it says architect, and then it says in brackets embedded. So I don't have this particular font, but it still works because he has embedded the font into the file. The same thing for the Simsun font, this one here. I actually have this font, and so it's not using an embedded version. but the file itself has embedded the font. So if I go to File and I say Save As, right here, you'll see that there's an option to embed fonts. And what that means is that it's going to put the font files inside the CorelDRAW file so that you can share the file with somebody else that may not have those particular fonts, and they can use them and edit the text as text. Certain fonts allow that, certain fonts don't, but what happens when you do that, obviously, is that it's going to add to the file size because you're putting those fonts in the file. And the fonts, I want to say that there were like 5 or 6 different fonts used in this file, and embedding all of those then added up to total 20 megabytes. Then there's also this embed color profiles, which is going to take up a little bit of space too. Because we don't print professionally, we don't really need to embed color profiles. So I usually uncheck that. And then there's this one here. Again, if you're trying to share the file with somebody, that's great. You can send the fonts along with it. But if you're trying to keep your file size down, you would just uncheck that. And so now I'm going to, let's see here. Not embedded. So I'm just going to save the same file, not embedded this time. And then if I go back to my file, it's over here. So if I go back to my file now, this one, the not embedded, is now only 619 kilobytes. So the difference was in those fonts. Now I was on my phone the other day when Tyler sent me this email, and so I didn't really have the ability to open up the file. But what I did to look at what the problem was is a CorelDRAW file is actually just a renamed zip file. So if I rename this and change the extension to .zip, then it's going to let me get into that file. And there's a bunch of different folders inside of there. And so if we go to this embed folder, that's where those files are at that are causing the issue. So even the compressed size is 9 kilobytes for each of those. There was some other stuff in here which usually causes larger issues, and that is sometimes styles will get created. If you've got especially text, if you've got text that's filled with granite colors, then it can embed that as a style sometimes. But you can see on this, even though it's a 35 megabyte file, the compressed size is only 181 kilobytes, so that's not a big deal there. And then normally under content, there's this data folder, and there's a bitmaps data file in there. Again, it's 35 megabytes, but compressed, it's really small. So that wasn't the issue. The issue was the embedded fonts. So if you're ever curious as to what's inside your CorelDRAW file, you can always rename it as a .zip and get in there and take a look at it. And then if you want to use it again, you just rename it as CDR, and then you can open it back up. Any questions on what font embedding is and why it's used or that kind of stuff?
So if I was sending, like if I put something together and I emailed it to a printer, if I embedded the fonts and the colors, then it would eliminate the need for me to send them the font and all the colors, correct?
Yes, so as long as the font allows embedding. Some fonts don't allow embedding. And so usually I find it best to go ahead, if I'm sending it to somebody else, I'll normally convert that text to curves anyway, so that I make sure that when it comes in on the other end, it's going to be the way that I designed it, and it's not going to change at all. But you can give it to them both ways, you know, so that they have one that's editable and that they've got one that, you know, should be exactly the way that you've got it. There's
Okay.
nothing against that.
Can
And I do
you-
that quite often to just make sure that things are exactly the way they should be. So often, like if it was this design, for instance, a lot of times I would grab this portion of it right here, make a plot file or a plot page, sorry. And then on the plot page, I would take all of the text and go up to object and say convert to curves. And then I do the same thing here, go to object and convert to curves. Or you can go up to edit and say select all and then text. And if there's any text on there, it will select all the text. And then you can convert it to curves all at once. But that way on the plot page, I know that nothing, you know, is going to be different from the way that I designed it. And then on the original page, they can see how it's supposed to look in color, and they can make edits if they really needed to. But that's normally what I would do if I was trying to send a file to somebody else.
Okay,
But,
thank you.
you know, depending on what your end purpose is. If it's for a brochure or something, then, you know, usually I'll just send them out like a PDF file that's already the way that it's supposed to be printed, and all they have to do is hit the print button from there.
Okay.
Okay. But Tyler, did that make sense?
Yeah, it did. Just one other thing, what would you do for kind of archiving purposes or making this file usable to add the other spouse's name in the future?
Okay, so what I would do is, this is kind of my own, just my own way of doing things. You know, you don't need any of this other stuff. So if you grab what you want to keep, okay, and then you hit the invert selection button, what that does is it selects everything that you don't need anymore, and then you can delete it. So that's pretty easy. I would go back to grayscale on the colors, so I wouldn't have any color in it at all. I myself don't like harsh outlines on the shapes. So normally I will double click everything, and then I'll right click on this no color swatch. What that does is it takes off all the outlines so that I don't have any harsh outlines anymore. And then as far as the panels and the text and that sort of stuff, you know, it doesn't matter if you keep this name. I don't think that matters too much, for at least for a template file, right? But I'd get everything back to the grayscales like this, and then I'd go and do a save as, and then I would take it and put that in wherever I have my artwork saved. So if I just go to MemorialDESIGNER, I'll do it this way. I'm going to go to MemorialDESIGNER, and then if I was keeping a collection of my own artwork, okay, one, for orders, I usually keep stuff in current work, and then I just archive it kind of by the year that it was created. But if I wanted to add to my artwork collection, I'm going to put it under the classic collection folder, because when I search by number or do an open by number, it's going to, I have it set to search for this folder. And so in this case, I can just use Brown Memorials as an example. So Brown Memorials, if this were my monument company, I'd have my own folder in there, and then I would give it a name or a number. And let's just say, I'll just stick with the same numbering stuff here since it's for Brown Memorials, and I'll do the next number, okay? And then I would add tags. So I would usually put what this is, and maybe, you know, so I'd put special shape, die, vanishing chamfer. And I'm just separating the tags with a semicolon. And then I would, you can put the size and stuff on there if you really want to, 30 by 30, that sort of stuff. And apex top or rooftop, whatever you want to call that kind of top. So I would tag it normally, give it a name, and then save. One last thing that I forgot to do is, because it already had granite fills in it, what I should have done is, after I went to grayscales, I should go ahead and select everything and then tell it to forget fills. That way it forgets that it ever had any sort of fill in it. That way when I save it, it's not going to save it with those fills that I had. You can of course leave it filled if you want to, but I find it better for templates just to keep them grayscale to start with. So now that I've got my template file, and I also wouldn't want the plot page either, so I'm just going to right click on the plot page and hit delete. So I'll resave it now. Okay, so now that I've got my my templated file, SBM0002, if I had printed that out in a book or put it on my website or whatever the case may be, if somebody wanted to use it later on, all I'd have to do is hit open by number, okay? And then open by number will pop up like this. And I just need to make sure that I've got the settings set to the right place because I've been messing with stuff. Looks right. So all I'd have to do is do SBM0002 and hit open, and it will go and find that file for me and open it up. I don't have to go searching for it. So that's the reason that I give it a number or an easy name, is because I want to be able to open it up quickly in the future. Or yeah, it's just quick access to something that I already know the number for. And then the other thing too, if you don't know the number exactly, if you go to the open or import, and let's say we're back at the classic collection, if we had searched classic collection for apex top, and then just hit the blue button here to let it do its search, it will go and search and find anything that I had tagged with that tag. And so now it's found my design with an apex top. Make sense? Did that answer the question, Tyler? You got a thumbs up, so that's good. Awesome. Okay, so that's what I do. I give my artwork a name, a simple number that I can easily open up by number, and give it tags and take out the fills. The last thing that I would do if I was really trying to make this a good template, because I use StoneSpot Connect, is I would template this even further so that it works with StoneSpot Connect. And to do that, I'd have to go into Objects and right click on this text and rename it. And I would call this MD_firstname_1. And this I would rename MD_date of birth _1. And then this one, I would rename this to MD_date of passing _1. I guess this is probably a last name comma first name. So as far as templating goes, I don't have a way of separating those out really well. So I would just keep it at the first name and work with it that way. But so I'd rename those text fields so that if I was using StoneSpot Connect to pull in the data, it would pull in the names and dates and stuff for me. But that's about it. That's how I get that file as a template for future reference.
Can I ask you another question?
Yep.
Okay, so in our shop, or in Tom and Tyler's case, they're both designers. So if Tom's building things each week and Tyler is too, since this doesn't live in the cloud, how could me and Gary, Tom and Tyler network our computers together so that every time I dump something in Magnolia Monuments Classic Collection, Gary also has access to it?
Yeah, so there are various ways you can do that. The way that I do it is I use OneDrive. So all of my files are saved in OneDrive. And that way, when I go to File and I say Save As, if we look at the path here, okay, you can see it's here under OneDrive, and then my stuff. Now, if I wanted to share this with somebody else, so if I wanted to share this with Charlie and make sure he's got access to all this stuff, I would put it under our company's SharePoint share, which is this one here. And then we've got, so just Sandblast and, Classic Collection or whatever we want to, wherever I'd want to save it here. But this synchronizes with Charlie's computers. So we share all of these files with each other.
Okay.
And this is so we use OneDrive for business, which gives us the ability to build this SharePoint site. We also then get our own OneDrive for our own personal files that we can use. And then I also have a personal OneDrive account as well that I used to use. Depending on which way you want to go, there's a little bit of a level of complexity with the business end of things. It's a little bit more complicated, but the reason it's more complicated is because it gives you that ability to easily share with everybody else. So it's either you use your personal one and share that login, or you share your OneDrive stuff with other people. And the same thing goes with Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever the case may be. If you've got your cloud folders set up, you can save everything to the cloud, even though you're working on it on your machine and the software itself isn't cloud-based. The files that you're saving and the artwork and stuff is, or can be.
I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I definitely suggest that. I mean, it's great because literally Charlie's in Illinois, and I'm here in Cheyenne, and we'll be working on stuff. He'll save a file, and a couple of seconds later, it's on my computer, and so we go back and forth a lot that way. If we really need to work on something together, we'll just go ahead and do a meeting like this and work on it together. But mostly, if we're just sharing files, it's all based off of saving things to a cloud drive.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that I do myself, though, especially with OneDrive, is I have OneDrive set to store these files also locally so that they're not just in the cloud. And on my desktop, I have it set up that way because I have the hard drive space. On my Surface, I actually have some stuff set to only download from the basically as needed. And so if we look at here, you see how there's this little green checkbox.
Yes.
That means that has been synced and that it's local on my machine. If I if I didn't have it local, it would have a little cloud icon. And on this particular monitor, I don't have my my OneDrive stuff. It's only on my other monitor, but basically I set the settings. Let me see if I can get to those settings. Do this here real quick. Okay, so in my OneDrive settings, there is an option for files on demand, and by default, OneDrive sets this so that you can save space and download files as you need them. I actually don't like to download things as I need them, so I uncheck that and save everything. So it actually saves a copy locally to your hard drive, and when you save the file, it saves it locally, and then it shoots it up to OneDrive to sync to everybody else. Whereas if you have this checked, a lot of times your stuff is going straight to OneDrive, straight to the cloud, and then you would download it later to use it. But anyway, so yeah, it's a great way to share things. Highly recommend it. Not only that, not only do you share things that way, but you can also have a backup, right? So you got it in the cloud, you've got it on other PCs. So if you have a fire and all of your stuff is gone, you don't lose all your data, which is
Right.
really important too. So good question.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. So Analia had a question, and she said, I want to know how to do a rectangle without the panels and spacing tool. Rectangle with scallop corners with an offset outside of the rectangle. 3/4 of an inch it looked like. So I'm going to try this on Aaliyah. If this is not what you want, just let me know in the chat that I'm horribly messing up whatever you're trying to have me show you. Let me open the chat here too, just to make sure I've got it. Where did that chat go? Thought I had the chat open. I'm still learning the Zoom stuff, I tell you. I do not have meetings. Huh. I have no idea where the chat went for this. So somebody try to chat something to me so that I can see if it pops up on my screen. I don't know where it went. It's gone. Here we go. There it is. Testing. Thank you. Thank you very much. It just disappeared for some reason. Okay. So we're going to build a rectangle. Usually to build a rectangle, I just use the rectangle tool and I click and drag. I don't care how big it is when I start it off because I'm going to change the size anyway. Normally in the past, I'd come up here to the object size to change the size, but I've actually gotten used to a little bit more to keyboard shortcuts of control. That was not the right button. See, I'm not used to it yet, I guess. My gosh. Shift X. If I hold Shift and X at the same time, then it pops up the object size here instead of there. And so I don't really have to go looking for it. And I'll just do 24, hit Tab, 12, hit Enter. And then I'll hit F4 so that it zooms to everything. Okay. So in order to do scalloped corners, we can come up here and click scalloped corner. Okay. And then up here, you give it the corner radius. So if you wanted 3/4 of an inch for your radius, you would just come up here and click in 0.75 and hit enter. You can do that for each of these if you really want to, or you can lock it. And locking, I believe, will let you, I think it changes all of them at the same time. All right, so it adds to whatever your number was. So let's go back to 0 and then 0.75. So that's a 0.75 scallop on the edges there. And then she asked about doing an offset, I think. Let me translate this French really quick. Do you guys ever use Google Translate for doing stuff in monuments ever?
Yes, I do.
So I'm gonna just pop up Google Translate here and throw this in until it goes. I don't know what that means. Offset outside. Okay, so we're gonna offset it, meaning we're gonna contour to the outside. If I use the contour tool, I would choose how much I wanted to contour and then go to the outside. Okay, so that's if I want to do it manually with the contour tool. I had somebody ask me this actually just this week because they were using, I'm not exactly sure how they did what they were doing. I think what they were doing was they were taking this object, okay, and then they were making it a little bit bigger. So they were making a copy and just making it bigger like this, maybe. And just by making something bigger, it's not going to contour correctly, right? So I'm fairly certain that's what they had done. And then they did it again and made it a little bit bigger. And then did it again and made it a little bit bigger. Something like that. And that was not the look that they were hoping for. And so you can use contour to do it yourself, or you can use, I know you said in the email not to use panels and spacing, but I would, if it were me, I'd just, use panels and spacing this way. Obviously there is with panels and spacing, there's a scalloped corners option, but we've already got scalloped corners, right? So we don't need that scalloped corners option. If we just click on single line and like this and hit apply, then it will build that panel around the existing box that we have as well, as long as recreate panel is not checked. If recreate panel is checked, then when I hit apply, it's going to turn it into a square, because it's basically rebuilding that inside panel portion and forgetting this part. So I would normally myself just use the Docker to do it, because there's a scalloped corner option. But the scalloped corner option, and let's just say we go double line like this. Okay, so we've got that. But the scalloped corner option doesn't give us the ability to do, I remember what he was doing. He was doing a round corner instead of a scallop corner. And so with the round corner, we don't have that option over here, right? And so we can build a panel rounded like this, and then we can apply our double line panel to that. Oops, I'm going to uncheck scallop corners and reapply it. And so that way we can build a panel around a rounded corner if we want to, because we're using this as our reference to begin with. So you could do all sorts of, crazy stuff with these if you really wanted to, and then just apply your panel style to it. But did that answer your question, Analia? Using the contour. And okay. We got that one. All right, I wanted to bring up another one that was asked about as well. And how to create a band. Okay, so a customer had sent this file, and he wanted a band that connected these two flowers. Okay, and so what he had done is, I'm not exactly sure what he had done, but I think he had a line like this, and maybe just brought it down. So I just copied and pasted that line and brought it down. Okay, so that's an option. You can copy and paste the top of your stone using the shape tool, and then bring it down like this. And then, so the question was, how do you turn this into, a double line to match this panel, or whatever the case may be? Because if you contour, and let's say we do a contour to the outside, what it does is it's contouring in both directions, because it's an open shape. It's just a single open line. So it's contouring in both directions. And so his question was, how would you, make a double line panel off of this, because of the way that it's contouring? So the contour tool would work if we wanted to, but what you have to do is then go to object, break apart, and then you'd have to come in here and delete all these pieces that you don't want, or all these lines that you don't want. You know, so that takes time, and I wouldn't really want to spend all that time on it. And so what I thought of might work best now that we've got the offset option here is what you can do is you can take the shape of the stone and set an offset. So the offset in his case was negative 1.5 inches. That'll give us a 1.5 inch band on the top. We're going to go to the inside and we're going to build a double line panel. Okay, so what that should do is it should offset, give us 1.5 inches of polish, and then it should start building a double line panel. And so once I hit apply, that's what it's going to do. Okay, so now we have a band that is going from there to there. So the question is, how do we only go from there to there and not have all the rest of the stuff? Okay, so what I would do is I'd take, and the way that the panel builder builds this is it's going to automatically combine these inside pieces. So even though if I break it apart, you'll see that there's 3 objects there. Even though there are 3 objects, they're combined together. So I'll grab those ones and then I'll shift select this one and combine those. So now they're all combined together. And the reason I do that is because now I can grab my eraser tool and just come over here and erase the stuff that I don't want. And I'm going to leave it so that it's overlapping just slightly. I want to make sure that the black of this is overlapping the black of this. The reason for that is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and weld it to this one. If we notice by clicking on this, it's showing the ungroup objects, and down here, you know, it's saying it's giving a file name. So this is actually just a file that he had imported. And so because he imported it, it came in as a group. So the first thing you'd need to do is you need to ungroup it so that we're not grabbing this piece. Because if we took this and shift selected this and then welded, what's going to happen is it's going to lose all that inside stuff, which is not what we want to happen. So we're going to ungroup it first and then grab this, holding shift, click on this one and weld it. And that will then weld so that this connects correctly. Okay. We could do the same thing over here on this side. If we wanted to, if we didn't want to ungroup this, if we wanted to keep it a group, not that I really care, but if we wanted to keep it a group, what we could do is we could hold control and click, and that way it's going to select this part of the group. So by holding control and clicking on that, and then shift selecting this, oh, actually, I'm going to eat my own words because it's not letting me weld that way. So I have to ungroup anyway. So I'm going to ungroup it, grab this one, holding shift, click on this one, and then hit W to weld, and that's going to weld it. So what that did was it made it so that all of that is connected correctly. The only thing left to do is fill it in the right way. And so to fill it in the right way, I just grab it all and hit the fill grayscale up here, or F on the keyboard. And what that will then do is it will go and fill those in the way that we want them to, other than there's this little spot and this little spot that had been knocked out before. So we're going to re-knock them out. We're just going to use knockout to click on them, come over to this side, knock out, and then make sure we hit escape to end our knockout tool. And now we've got a band connecting those two. So that's the way that I thought to do it, was to just use offset and a double line panel. You could do the same thing manually with manual steps, contouring, or the one other way that I had thought about doing it was if, so I'm going to revert back to the original here. The other way that I'd thought of doing it, again, if I grab these and just hit Control C to copy and Control V to paste, that's pasting that top line. Then I can nudge it down 1.5 inches. And then I've got my line to start with here. Actually, I'm going to be working off center, so I'm going to bring it even further down, maybe to about right there. I could apply an outline, let's say 0.25 inches, and that's going to give me the band, the inside band portion. Okay, then I can go up to object and convert that outline to an object, and that will then get rid of the center line and just leave me with that outline there. And then I can apply double line to this. Oh, we don't want to have an offset, so we're going to go offset 0. We're not going to go to the inside, we're going to the outside. Not double line, just single line, sorry. We'll do a single line to this and hit apply. And by doing a single line, then it creates that same look, same effect there. So that's another way I thought of doing it. Again, we'd still need to, trim it back or weld it to get it to fit. But those are two ways that I thought of building that that line. Any questions on that? No? Okay. Let's see. The other thing that I thought we'd covered today is to just kind of get into doing some layout work and showing how I would lay out a design. So let's pull this over here. Unless you've got any other questions or anything that you wanted to cover before we get into doing that. Yeah? All right, so we're going to lay out a design. And this particular design I want to lay out, I'm just going to start a new document here, okay? I'm going to build a rectangle. And again, I'm hitting Shift X, and then I'm going to do 20, Tab 10, hit Enter. So now, one thing I need to pay attention to is if my ratio is locked. You can see up here the lock ratio button. So Control Shift X is the key to unlock the ratio. So now if I Shift X again, then I can change it back to 20 and hit Enter. So that is one thing to pay attention to if you're using that shortcut, is whether or not your ratio has been locked, because you want to make sure that it types in the way that you want it to be. So I'm doing a 10 by 20, and then I'm going to add in some text here. I normally, when I'm doing my text, I don't really particularly care if it's centered when I type it in. I just like to get all my text to begin with. So I'm just going to type in everything that I need. And then we'll go from there. And then he's also got some Spanish that he wants on here. So that was another question that I had this week, was how to show Spanish or accents on characters. And so I'm going to show you 2 different ways of doing it here. Now, I have not taken any Spanish since high school, so if this is not right, you that know Spanish, let me know, please. I don't know. I'm going to type it up that way, and then we'll fix it later if it's not right. So I've got this text. Now that I've typed everything in, I'm going to break it apart into individual lines so that I can edit it individually. So I just hit Control K to break it apart. And then what I want to do is I want to show you how to do an accent. Okay, so this letter E we want to have accented. My MD Roman font does not have accents. So what I would want to do in this case is I would want to use a different font that does allow accents. The Monument Lettering Center fonts, and this is one reason that I love using them, is because they've got all the glyphs that I need for the most part. So if I switch to, let's just say I'm going to switch to this SKS version of Vermarco, okay? The E here, if I had a keyboard that I could type in a different language, I could just type it. I don't have my keyboard set to allow different languages. So what I would do instead is you can use what are called alt keys. And if you go to the internet and just do alt accent code and just do a search for alt codes for Windows, especially for accents, then what you can do is you can look and find the letter that you want. So let's just say this E here with that accent is 0201. So back in CorelDRAW, if I, instead of typing a regular E, if I held Alt and while holding Alt did a 0201, then what it does is it will accent that character for me because it's giving me the accented version of it. Okay, and the alt codes only work with a numeric keypad, so you have to make sure you type in your 0201 with the numeric keypad and not with the numbers that are above your letters. Okay. Another thing to notice, and this is a bug, I believe, in the way that it's rendering in CorelDRAW. At certain zoom levels, you'll see that that letter actually is moving down a little bit, and that's because Corel is using two different techniques for rendering that text, one of which is their own and one of which uses Windows. Not to get too technical, but if you run into that problem, let me know, because I'd really like to report it more to them. But other than that, if you want to fix it, if you just give it a slight outline, then it's not going to happen either. And again, it's only at certain zoom levels. So you can see that I've got an accented character there now. And there's another one here. So same thing, if I just hold Alt 0201 and then let go of Alt, then it's going to place that character for me. If you don't have a numeric keypad, what you can do is you can go up to text and glyphs. And then glyphs is going to, over here is the font that you want to use. So I would go back to, I can just type it in, MLC Vermarco, and then I'll choose the SKS one. And then this is going to show you all of the characters that are available in that font. And so you can just drag and drop and throw it in there as well. And actually, I want to make sure I drop it into here. So if you drag and drop, it will throw it in there as well. And that way you can get to it that way too. But those are some different ways of doing.
Tell me how you got to that. You went
Okay.
to the text.
So under text and then glyphs, there's a glyph stalker.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. And that's going to show you any glyphs that are available in the particular font that you have selected. And so you can see, if you look at this, you can see how many glyphs there are in this MLC font. Okay. If I go to my MD Roman font, all there is capital letters and there's no accents or anything. So again, just another plug for the MLC fonts is that he's gone and done all that work for all of those extended characters, which is really helpful when it comes to being able to do stuff like that.
So Hebrew.
Did you say Hebrew?
Hebrew.
Normally, if it's a different font like that, then I'm going to just have the customer provide the text, and I will just copy and paste, because that way I don't have to type anything in. If I tried to type in Hebrew, that would probably be a wreck. or, you know, if it's Arabic or whatever the case may be, I'm going to usually copy and paste from what they've sent.
Okay.
Tom, did you have a, I thought I heard somebody ask something. Was that you, Tom, or somebody else?
I think it was Analia.
Let me look.
She sent you a chat.
Oh, Pierre, that's too sonrisa. You can also double click on a letter. Double clicking on a letter. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Oh, are you talking about over here in the, instead of dragging and dropping? Let's look. Yes, there you go. Double clicking. That's maybe even nicer than dragging and dropping. Good thinking there. Okay. So yeah, for the glyphs, you can also double click. So that's nice. Or you can hit copy down here and paste it too. So all sorts of different ways to get to it if you need to. Again, normally though, I'd just like to have other people provide the text the way that they want it, and then I'll just copy and paste. Another thing to point out, because I am using the MLC fonts, you can see how when I was typing, I did some in caps and some in lowercase. And so there's two different sizes here. The MLC fonts, if they don't have a specific lowercase, the lowercase is a smaller version of the uppercase. And so if I want to have this all upper, I can just click on my AB all caps button here, and it will change it all to upper for me there. Thank you, Analia, for fixing that text for me. Okay. Okay, so if we keep going on this design, we've got text here. We're going to bring in a cross, okay, some sort of cross. I've got it set up with the connect content. Well, maybe I do. I'll have to look. Because connect content is connected to the whole classic collection, which is like 12,000 different emblems. The first time I click on it, it's going to take a little while to load because it's actually loading the database of all the tags and stuff. And so that's why it takes a long time initially. But if you've got CorelDRAW open and you've clicked on this, as long as you keep CorelDRAW open, it should only, you know, give you a wait time up front initially. So now that it's open and it's done all of its indexing, then it shouldn't be slow anymore. So just so that you're aware on how that works. So under search, if I just do simple cross, we'll see what pops up. Nothing. Ah, that's not good. How about just cross? I don't know why simple didn't work, but we've got crosses anyway. So we're going to scroll through these crosses and see. I mean, this is a very simple cross. I'm going to just drag and drop that one over. Something like that. With this particular cross, what we can do is, yeah, because it's, you know, very simple, we can resize this and make it smaller and not worry about it too much as far as whether or not this is the correct line width, because we can use, ooh, sorry, my dog just barked. We can use, this line shows us that it's 0.066 inches. So I'm just going to shift select that and run blastable. And that will then make it the 0.09 inches that I want it to be. So we can go like that. The stone shape itself, I'm going to do 30% right click so that it doesn't have any fill at all or outline. And then we need to decide, you know, if we're putting everything in a panel or if we're not going to put things in a panel. I think what I'll do for this one is go ahead and do a panel. And so I will do the same thing that we did before with panels and spacing. We're just going to go to the inside. We're going to leave maybe a 1 inch offset border. and we'll just do a single line and hit apply. Oop, that went backwards. The reason it went backwards is because I did a positive number for the offset. So I need to do a -1 there and hit apply, and then it will go to the inside. Something like that. Give me just a minute. I'm going to mute for just 1 second. All right, sorry about that. Okay. Everybody following so far? This text is a bit too big. I'm going to resize it like that. When I space my text, you can do it visually if you want to, or if you grab your text over here in the spacing section, you can choose your vertical spacing, so 1/2 inch, and hit apply, and it will give us 1/2 inch, or I can type in 3/8 of an inch and it will do it that way. Because we haven't checked whether or not this is centered left to right, what I'd normally do from here is I'll hold shift, click the stone, and then hit C to center, and it's going to then center it left to right for me. Same thing for this text here. I'm just going to shift click and center it. Because of the dates on a single line, they're not going to fit very well, right? So we've got a couple different options. And normally I will give, because the customer is not sitting here with me, I'll normally give a couple different options just so that they can make a choice. So we've got the option to change the font, or we've got the option to go to like a condensed version of the font. So if I come down here to condensed modified Roman, then it's going to fit better than if it were all the way across in the regular version there. So different options for that. For the last name, you can either come up and change the size, or I just usually will hold Control and use my 8 key on my numeric keypad to go up and down by 1/8 inch increments. So now I've got the text kind of all laid out, but I still want to space it inside this panel that we created. Because I've already created the panel, I'm not building a panel around that text, right? And so I'm going to grab these and space them. And then I'll just bring this down and something like that. Or what I can do is I can grab it and do quick distribute, where I'm clicking the top of the panel and the bottom of the panel. And that's going to give me even distribution between all of them. I don't really like that look because it's not separating things out as well, I don't feel like. So I would, I kind of like having it separated a little bit further. And then we've got this cross that if we put in here, they also wanted it on the other side. Okay. I think it's still a little too big, so I'm going to make it smaller. And just make sure that that's the right size. And now that I've got it on the left the way that I want it, if I grab it and just hit M to mirror it, it will mirror it to the other side that way. So what I was going to show you on this one is I was going to just take this out and break it apart like that and do 2 lines. And then maybe grab this and cut and copy. Maybe that's not going to work so well. Let's change this to the same condensed Roman font and see how we like it. Something like that. But that gives you a little different option if you're going to, you know, stack the dates as opposed to doing it this way. I don't know, which way do you guys like better?
I like it stacked.
This way over here on the right?
Yeah.
I don't like to use a whole bunch of different fonts very often, you know, in the same design. If I were to use condensed here, I might also use condensed here. But if I'm not going to use the condensed, I'm definitely going to use the matching version. So the MLC, Roman SKS, this one here, just to match it. That way I'm using the same base font there. So I would, you know, give them 2 options and they can make a choice that way, which one they like better. Any questions on layout work that way, whether anything that didn't kind of make sense as to what I was doing, or anything you'd want to see different?
No, that's helping me just to see step by step, like from the beginning, kind of come up with a design and show me different ways of whether you could build the panel first or fit the text to the panel or fit the panel to the text. So
yeah, so the
that helps me.
Yeah, the reason that I worked off of the shape instead is because if I had started with the text, okay, if I didn't have a panel at all, I could start with the text this way. Normally, I'm not going to have my cross involved, so I'll just pull that out. But if I had started with my text this way first, right now, building the panel is only going to allow one. That's technically now we've got 2 sets of spacing. We've got panel spacing and text spacing. So the panel spacing one right here is how much space there is between the top of the text and the bottom of the text in the panel. And then we've got text spacing, which is between each line of text. But we don't have it yet set up to where you can do different spacing between text. So that's one reason I didn't do this. The other reason is that if I go ahead and build this panel just with the way that it is, you can see that I've got more of a border top to bottom than I do left to right. And that's because I'm going off of the text as opposed to off of the stone shape, which I mean isn't necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes when I'm doing a border, I like to have a consistent border. You know, so I could change this, I guess, end spacing to a different amount and hit apply, and it's not going to be as much, but it's still not the exact amount. So that's why I started with the shape of the stone and built my panel that way, was so that I had a consistent distance all the way around, right? So I don't know. There's definitely different ways of doing things. I might also keep this polished instead of, you know, I don't know. There's all sorts of different things we can do here. I don't think I would want this to not have very much border there. So I'm either going to bring this in or I'm going to go all the way out. I could go all the way out with it. If I just drag this to the edge and do the same thing with this one, drag this to the edge. And then I'm only going to have a top and bottom polished and not edges. So 2 different looks there. Okay. Make sure that I've got that. So when I'm ready to send this off to a customer, right, as a proof, the next thing that I would do is I would fill it with the granite color. So in this case, we can go with gray. And I've got my Georgia blue, which is what I normally use. So if this is the one that I'm normally going to use, I'm going to right click on it and favorite it so it's up here. That way I can access that quickly. So I'll fill it in with that color. And maybe if I wanted to try to upsell a little bit, this is already sold, so I don't need to upsell. But if I was doing this in person with the customer, you know, I might show it in a few different colors so that they can see what it looks like in different colors. And that way they'd have a little better ability to decide on what color that they liked too. So whether or not it's already sold and I'm sending it off, you know, just for approval, or if I'm trying to make a sale, I would do different things like this. But in this case, it is already sold. So we'll just do gray and we'll go like that. And then the next thing that I would do is I'd give it a background. So if I grab this and hit my add background button, it's going to throw in my background file for me. And then I would change the information in here as to what it is. So for the stone order, this is a 20 by 10 by 4, and it's a polished flat top, Georgia gray. So I'd have that. All the rest of these things, I don't need these anymore. So I'm getting rid of those. And the order number, cemetery, you know, I'd fill out all this information and say that today is the 7th of 2021. So I'd get all that laid out the way that I want it done, and then grab it. And if I'm emailing it, I would just hit my JPEG button. Actually, so before we go any further, since we've got this all done, I haven't saved this file yet, which is usually not a very smart thing because things happen, computers crash, you know, stuff happens. So what I want to do is I'd want to go up to file and save this so that I can get back to it later. And again, I mentioned that I keep, if I was doing my work, I would just keep it under my current work folder. And then give it the name. Normally I give it a, when it comes to the name, I'm going to give it the order number. So in this case, the order was 141601. And then when I do it, I just type in the last name, comma, first and middle. And this is how I organize my files. So by order number, last name, first names. And if there were multiple people, I just do Frank and Bobby or whatever the case may be. So I would save it and click save. So now I've got my file saved. And because I've got my file saved, now when I go and grab this and hit my JPEG button, it's going to automatically save the JPEG with that same name. And what I can then do is I could just move this over this way, grab this one and hit the JPEG button again. Actually, yeah, that's fine. I'll do that. No, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this to version 2. Just so that they can choose which one they like better, 1 or 2. Okay, so then I'll hit the JPEG button again. And if I load up my files where those go to, documents, MemorialDESIGNER, sorry, I don't have all my shortcuts handy. And proofs, I'll just put this up here in quick access so that I can get to it faster next time. If I go to my proofs, you can see that there's now my proof in there, and I've got my version number 1, then I've got a -2. The reason it gave me a -2 is because this one already existed, right? And so it's giving me a -2 for that. So then I can email both of those off and see which one that they like better. Or if they don't like any of them, then we can make changes from there. But that pretty much covers start to finish on a design, how I'd go about, you know, laying everything out, sending out the proof, and all that sort of stuff. Any questions?
Very helpful.
And then Annalia asked if I converted the text to curves. I have not converted the text to curves. It's all still editable text. As you can see up here, it's giving me the font that is. So I have not converted this to curves because I'm I don't really have a need. I'd rather keep it as text because then it's editable, right? And then when I send out a JPEG, the JPEG's a bitmap file, so that doesn't really matter. But no, this is still editable text. Editable. I don't even know how to talk. Editable text. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think that actually gets us to about time for today. So hopefully that was helpful and covered your questions. And I want to say, is that you, Derek? Do you have a microphone at all? If you don't want to talk, that's totally fine. You can always chat too. So I just noticed that you had popped on, so it's good to have you. It's always good to have new faces and see new people. So thanks for joining us today, and we will continue this on Friday. So keep sending your questions, and emails are great on anything that you're having troubles with. But other than that, we'll see you on Friday.
Thank you, Cameron.
Have a good one, everybody.